Thank you so much. Good morning, Derek. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session on Remote Working is Here to Stay, Can It Work? My name is Lee Williamson. I'm the editor of Generation T, which is Tatler Asia's content and events platform for the leaders of tomorrow. Now, this year has been the world's largest ever impromptu remote work experiment. I'm in the office right now, as you can see, but like all of you watching, I've done my fair share of remote working this year. And enjoyed the benefits as well as some of the drawbacks of turning my home into my place of work. During this session, we're going to discuss the future of remote work. Is it here to stay? If so, how do we make it work? Or is it, in fact, a necessary temporary adjustment in the time of lockdowns that will see us rushing back to the office as soon as this pandemic is behind us? To discuss this and more, I'm delighted to be joined by Derek Pando, Head of International and Partner Marketing at Zoom. Derek's expertise is in international marketing, product marketing, and marketing strategy. He also writes and speaks on collaboration, technology, and professional relationships. Derek, welcome.
Thank you, Lee. Really excited to be here. Appreciate the invitation. Looking forward to our discussion.
As am I. So let's get straight into it. So in their book, How Google Works, Eric Schmidt and Jonathan Rosenberg of Google write that although Silicon Valley produces the tools to help people work remotely, for the most part, Silicon Valley itself is office-based. They go on to say that although remote working is seen as the height of enlightened thinking by some people, Google and in fact most tech companies, at least pre-pandemic, believe that people work better when they're in the same room, when there's chance conversations can have over the water cooler. What's your take on that? Putting the pandemic aside for 1 second, what's your take on that opinion?
Well, I think pre-pandemic, to a large degree would agree with them, right? But I think a lot of that is because we've been learning how to collaborate in person since humans existed, and collaborating virtually is still relatively new to us. And because so many people still had the in-person collaboration option, remote work was never being adapted as quickly as everyone predicted. Like for years they were saying, "Oh, this is the year." But I think what's really changed is what you mentioned earlier. We had a forced worldwide experiment that made it so a lot of us, we had to learn, and people didn't have a choice. And I don't know if we've completely figured it out yet, but I do know that our ability as like a global economy to innovate is improving drastically day by day
Right.
as we continue through this.
Right. We know that tech has like 3 to 5 year cycles typically, and this pandemic has just accelerated everything, right? It's accelerated the more widespread adoption of live streaming. It's accelerated e-commerce, digitization of absolutely everything. So with that in mind, since the pandemic, a lot has happened in the remote working space as well, very, very quickly, as you say. Twitter announced early on in the lockdown the huge swathes of their staff could work remotely until at least 2021. In August, Pinterest canceled a huge San Francisco office lease. I believe you're also based in San Francisco, right? They cited the shift to working from home as the reason for canceling that planned big office. And in September, Facebook announced it was hiring a remote work director even. So do you think Silicon Valley and tech companies worldwide will move towards a permanent shift on remote work moving forward?
I think so, absolutely, yes. And actually, Lee, I was based in Silicon Valley until about a month and a half ago. So I am kind of a poster child myself. I moved to the East Coast, to North Carolina. A lot of that was driven by cost. I've got kids. I needed more space. I needed a bigger home office. And the challenges in those high cost locations, when now you don't have the option, and also the playing field has been leveled to a large degree.
Yeah.
I think because there's so many companies that have drawn a line in the sand and said, this is what we're going to do, and they're in it for the long term. I think it means that we're not going to go back. Now, I'm not predicting the downfall of Silicon Valley, because I think there's other unique things about it that's going to make it a center of technology innovation.
Yeah.
But we now are being able to take advantage of the talent, right, and the cost savings and all the other benefits that have been espoused for so long.
Right. To what extent is Zoom betting on remote working being here to stay with regards to your planning? and people fundamentally changing the way we operate post-pandemic. And I'm also anecdotally interested to know, based on your product, at Zoom itself, how many of you work remotely and how many of you are in an office?
Yeah. So, right now, just about all of us work remotely. So basically the entire company is remote right now. And then, what we're preparing for is we're preparing for a world where you always have the option. Because, we've seen this in many parts of the world where going back to the office, it starts slowly and it becomes a hybrid situation. And people now are accustomed to it and have shown their productivity. And so for us, it's not about, is it going to be fully remote or fully in the office? It's about, are people going to have, they're going to need the option from here on out. And so Zoom, we're trying to position ourselves in a way, whether it be from how we, build out video-enabled conference rooms for a workforce that even when you're in the office, you're going to have more people that are outside of the office than maybe you did before, or people that are working, from their home that need, a dedicated personal video device or need to have the tools from home to be able to collaborate.
What do you think are the wider implications of this rise in remote work? I mean, looking at productivity, looking at the way we manage our time, looking at work-life balance. I can't be the only person in the world that finds they're maybe not necessarily their most creative between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. So like, what will be the benefits, do you think, of productivity, creativity, of more flexible working schedules, of remote work?
No, Lee, I'm with you. Like I'm an early riser and I like to work, really early, and that's when I kind of hit my sweet spot. But if I start at 6 a.m., does that mean I, have to wait until the end of a normal work day, or can I leave earlier or run some errands or go, to my kid's baseball game or whatever? So, I mean, I think it goes back to the flexibility of, especially if you're able to maintain productivity, people should be able to do whatever schedule works for them. And also, one of the changes I've seen too is like we're more global now, and as people are working more globally and more across different time zones and geos, that's a necessity anyways. And remote work is making that easier. It's making it more natural. You don't have an advantage to being in the office anymore, or being in the right office in those situations.
Right. Zoom has become, I don't know if it's going to end up being the word that goes into the dictionaries this year. It has become, the thing of 2020. It's become a cultural phenomenon in terms of the number of memes around Zoom and so on. There was a great Halloween one where someone set up a skeleton in their garden who was talking to skeletons on squares, right? So like the skeleton doing a Zoom call. It's become a cultural phenomenon. So you guys have really, owned this space so much. But what is made this horrendous year more manageable and helped us to keep in touch with people? But what else is coming out from Zoom, or maybe other tech that is going to come out from others, that is going to make remote working kind of more optimal, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. Like, you're totally right. Like, no one ever talked to me about my Zoom shirt at the grocery store until earlier this year. But I think a good example of this is, the introduction of some more fun aspects of communication in Zoom, right? Like, so we introduced, we introduced different kinds of filters, and while you may say, hey, Derek, like this is more, essentially more consumer focused. Yeah. Yes, that's true, but also, we've got to find ways to replace the fun, the personal, hey, let's chat at lunch, or hey, let's take a minute and talk about something not work related that builds bonds and helps us, I don't know, be more human at work. And so I think you're going to see more of that. We're going to find ways to help people connect and try to replicate some of the water cooler experiences that really brought people together in the office.
Right. I mean, how much has the use of just consumer use grown rather than business use in 2020? Do you have any stats on it? It must be massive.
Lee, could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, basically, you must have in 2020, you've had a huge rise in non-business use of Zoom, in consumer use in Zoom. Do you have any numbers on that, on just exactly how many people are using Zoom, that, how many new non-business customers you now have?
I don't have specific to non-customer, but to kind of give you a sense of the scale that we experienced. So in December of last year, the most amount of daily meeting participants we had at any given day was 10 million, right? Mm-hmm. And then you fast forward to April of this year, and it was at 300 million daily meeting participants. And so, in a matter of weeks, we scaled to, over 30 times, the kind of usage that we were seeing. And yeah, the consumer piece is obviously massive, where people are having birthday parties and they're doing, yoga classes. Where prior to the pandemic, we were primarily used by, enterprises and corporations and financial services institutions, and that were being used to collaborate over video.
Slightly off topic, you've worked at several high growth enterprise software companies in the past. I know you've been at Salesforce, LinkedIn, and so on. But have you ever before in your career seen anything like the remarkable amount of explosive growth that Zoom experienced in 2020?
No, not even close. There's nothing. To give you a sense of it. So because I work on our markets outside the U.S., I was tracking initially what was happening across Asia, and I would literally wake up every day and just see explosions of usage country by country, and it would follow the lockdowns. And initially we mobilized a task force that was focused on what was happening across Asia. But over time, obviously it spread to the whole world, and the whole company was mobilized. Mm-hmm. But it was clear early that this was different. This was a kind of a black swan event for the world, but also for us as a company. And even in the early days, we felt the enormous, weight and responsibility of that, and it became more of a mission, because when you grow 30x, you are not ready. You don't have the right people. You need. We haven't been able to hire fast enough. But I think what's kept me going and many of us going at Zoom is that we feel like we're keeping the world going, and that motivates us beyond just, hey, great, we have new users, or great, more people are buying Zoom. This is our moment to support the world, and we're doing our best to rise to the occasion.
And from a leadership standpoint, how do you deal with that? No doubt it's a nice challenge to have, but it's a challenge for you and your team and everyone at Zoom nonetheless. How have you rallied your team, your existing team, while you're hiring to rise to the occasion? Are there any tips that you could share for the entrepreneurs and business owners watching this?
Yeah, I think at the core, you got to acknowledge that this experience, regardless of whether you're at a company like Zoom that is seeing an increase in usage, or you're at a company that is having a difficult time, people have a lot of different ways the pandemic is impacting them negatively. So from a leadership perspective, I think you have to start with empathy and understanding that there's a lot of other stuff going on in people's lives. And starting there and trying to ask the real, how are you? Really look at them, I think has helped, and it's helped me when other leadership around me. I think too, we've tried to rally the company to that higher mission. It's easy to be look at what's on your plate work-wise and say, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming, we can never do all this. But then breaking it down to, the stories of how people their lives are changing, or their businesses. We started a chat group called Cool and Inspiring Stories, where we saw something in the news about someone using Zoom that inspired us, or was innovative, or made us, shed a tear. We put it in there, and that was kind of fuel for us to keep going when we were, understaffed and working 24/7.
It's amazing. We have 19 seconds left, but I want to ask you a final question. You have 2,500 followers on Twitter, which isn't massive in the world of Twitter, but I noticed that Barack Obama is one of them. How did that happen? I'm so jealous.
Well, the answer, which I don't think is true, is he loves my dad jokes, and so he follows me. The potential real answer is that in the early days of Barack Obama's candidacy, they followed back anyone who followed him, and I might have been one on the earlier side of following. But I hope it's not the latter and the former. But I think that's probably the case.
Are you an early adopter, both at Zoom and also in Barack Obama's candidacy? That's great to know. That if you want to predict the future, Derek's your man. Okay, thanks so much, Derek. I think we're out of time. It's been a real pleasure talking to you this morning or this evening, your time.
Thank you, Lee. It was a pleasure talking to you.